All right, let's talk about something really important. You work hard for your money, right? You save it, you try to make it grow, but what if its value is just draining away without you even realizing it? Well, that's the whole idea behind de-dollarization. It's this huge global shift that's happening as we speak. So in this explainer, we're going to break down what it is and, more importantly, what it could mean for your money. Let's dive in.
I mean, just think about your grocery bill. A year ago, maybe it was $100. Today, for the exact same stuff, it's $110. Your paycheck didn't change, but your money is buying you less. This quote just nails that feeling, doesn't it? It's this quiet, sneaky way your wealth just disappears. And that right there is the core of this whole conversation. So, how is this actually happening? Let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can even talk about the challenge, we've got to wrap our heads around just how big of a deal the US dollar is on the world stage. I mean, it's way more than just America's money. For decades, it's been the bedrock of the entire global financial system.
Yeah, there's a term for this. Economists call it dollar dominance. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like it's the world's default operating system for money. You know, like Windows or iOS, but for finance. So when Brazil sells soybeans to China, that deal is almost always priced and paid for in US dollars. It's the language everyone speaks when it comes to global trade.
So what's holding all this up? Well, it really comes down to these four main pillars. First up, oil. It's priced in dollars, which means basically every country on Earth needs dollars just to keep the lights on. Then you've got international business deals. They're usually done in dollars because it's stable. Third, most of the world's debt is in dollars, which gives the US a ton of financial power. And last but not least, central banks all over the globe hold huge piles of dollars as their safety net. You can see how a crack in any one of these pillars could, well, it could shake the whole thing.
So, if the dollar is so powerful, who's actually challenging it? Well, meet the BRICS nations. We're talking about a group of major economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus their new members. And they're not just talking. They are actively trying to build a whole new parallel financial system. The main goal? To be a lot less dependent on the US dollar. Let's take a look at what their plan is.
Okay, now this is a really, really important point, so I want to be super clear. This is not about some sudden overnight collapse of the dollar. That's Hollywood stuff. In the real world, big shifts like this happen slowly over decades. Think of it more like a slow erosion, not some big bang.
And this really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the world we live in now, where everything runs through the US dollar. But on the right, that's the BRICS vision. It's a world where countries can just trade directly with each other, using their own money. They're even kicking around this idea of a new unit of account, which is just a fancy way of saying a neutral yardstick to measure value, so they don't have to use the dollar at all. It's a huge step towards a world with multiple major currencies.
Okay, so what does any of this have to do with you? What happens if this BRICS vision actually starts happening and fewer countries need the dollar? Well, that is exactly when this big global game of chess starts hitting you right where it hurts, your wallet. And that brings us to inflation. Man, this quote is just so powerful because it's so true. Inflation is like a silent tax. It doesn't send you a bill in the mail. It's just this invisible force that makes everything more expensive, quietly eating away at the value of the money you've already earned. It's brutal.
So here's the chain reaction. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, the world needs fewer dollars, so the dollar gets weaker. Step 2, because our dollar is weaker, it costs us more to buy stuff from other countries. So that smartphone from Asia that used to be $800, now it's $900. Not because the phone is better, but because our dollar is worth less. And guess who pays for that? You do. That extra cost gets passed right on to you at the store, and suddenly your paycheck just doesn't go as far.
And that chain reaction, it leads us directly to the next really scary part, the money you've carefully saved for your future. Because if the dollar's buying power is dropping, then the real value of your savings is dropping right there with it.
And this is where it gets kind of tricky, and frankly, a little infuriating. Your bank statement can say you have, let's say, $10,000. That number on the screen doesn't change. But if inflation is running at 5%, in 1 year, that 10 grand will only buy you what $9,500 buys you today. You've lost $500 of real value without spending a single penny. It's wealth just vanishing right out of your savings account.
And this really shows you the divide, who wins and who loses in this situation. If your money is just sitting in cash or you're on a fixed income, you are absolutely the most vulnerable. You're losing purchasing power every single year.
But on the other hand, if you own what people call hard assets, things like real estate or gold, their dollar price usually goes up with inflation. Why? Because those things have real tangible value, and they can protect your wealth when the money itself is getting weaker.
And look, this isn't just about us as individuals. It's a much bigger picture. As you can see here, entire groups and even countries are at risk. People on fixed incomes, like retirees, they get hit the hardest. And then you have whole nations that have a ton of debt in US dollars. Suddenly that debt gets a lot harder to pay back. And countries that have to import a lot of their food and energy, the cost of just surviving can skyrocket for their citizens.
All right, let's bring this all home. This is probably the most important part. What does all this mean for you and your money? As we start to wrap this up, I want to leave you with 3 final warnings, 3 major risks you really need to be thinking about to protect yourself financially in this kind of world.
First up is what I'm calling the cash mindset danger. We were all taught that cash is king, that it's safe. But in a world with high inflation, where the currency itself is losing value, holding on to a big pile of cash is like holding a melting ice cube. It just disappears over time.
Second, there's the debt trap risk. Think about it. Let's say your mortgage payment is $2,000 a month. That number is fixed. But when the cost of gas, food, and electricity all shoot up, that $2,000 payment suddenly feels a lot heavier. It takes up a much bigger piece of your pie, and what used to be a manageable bill can turn into a real financial burden fast.
And finally, there's the skill and asset gap. An environment like this tends to pull people further apart financially. On one side, you have people who own assets, stuff that goes up in value with inflation. On the other side are people whose wages just can't keep up with rising prices. And it's not just about assets. It's also about having skills that are in high demand, in fields like tech or healthcare, that let you earn more money and stay ahead of inflation.
So at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one big question. And look, the point of all this isn't to make you panic. It's to make you aware. Because understanding these huge global shifts is the absolute first step you can take to make smarter decisions with your own money. In a world that's changing this fast, knowing what's going on is your best defense. Thanks so much for watching.